When we talk about global energy, names like Saudi Arabia, Russia, or the United States often dominate the conversation. But there is a small country on the Arabian Peninsula that has quietly become one of the most influential energy powers on Earth. That country is Qatar. Though it's only about the size of Connecticut or half the size of Switzerland, Qatar sits on top of a natural gas treasure so vast that it has reshaped global energy markets. It is the world's largest exporter of liquefied natural gas, or LNG. Its supplies keep homes heated, factories running, and power plants generating electricity across Asia, Europe, and beyond. But here's the critical twist. Almost all of Qatar's gas exports must pass through one of the world's most volatile waterways, the Strait of Hormuz. A narrow channel that, if blocked, could send shockwaves through the entire global economy. In this video, we'll answer 3 essential questions. First, how much natural gas does Qatar actually produce? Second, how much of the world's gas does Qatar supply? And third, why does the Strait of Hormuz matter so much? Let's dive in. To understand Qatar's gas power, we have to start underground, or rather, under the seabed. Qatar shares with Iran the world's largest natural gas field. Known in Qatar as the North Field and in Iran as South Pars, this geological giant holds an estimated 24.7 trillion cubic meters of recoverable natural gas. That's roughly 10% of the world's known natural gas reserves, all concentrated in one field just off Qatar's coastline. This makes Qatar the world's 3rd largest holder of natural gas reserves, behind only Russia and Iran. But Qatar has a crucial advantage. Qatar's reserves are almost entirely non-associated gas, meaning they're dedicated for export, not tied to oil production. But reserves alone don't matter. What matters is production, and here, Qatar is truly exceptional. Qatar's annual natural gas production currently stands at over 170 billion cubic meters. That's roughly 4.5% of the entire world's gas output. But the real story is how Qatar processes and ships it. Qatar has invested over $100 billion to build the world's largest LNG infrastructure. At Ras Laffan, natural gas is cooled to minus 162 degrees Celsius, turning it into liquid form, LNG, which shrinks its volume by 600 times. That makes it possible to transport gas across oceans to markets that pipelines cannot reach. Today, Qatar's LNG capacity stands at 77 million tons per annum, and that number is about to skyrocket. The North Field Expansion Project, one of the largest energy projects ever undertaken, will raise capacity to 126 million tons per annum by 2027. That's an increase of over 60%. But how much of this actually reaches the world? Let's quantify that. Qatar is the world's leading LNG exporter, consistently supplying roughly 20 to 22% of global LNG demand. That means out of every 5 LNG cargoes crossing the oceans, 1 is from Qatar. But who actually receives this gas? For decades, Asia has been Qatar's primary market. Japan, historically the top importer, relies on Qatari LNG for nearly 20% of its gas needs. China and South Korea are also massive buyers. In fact, the Asia-Pacific region absorbs more than 70% of Qatar's LNG exports. However, the global energy landscape shifted dramatically after 2022. Following the energy crisis, Qatar became a vital partner for Europe. Long-term deals were signed with Germany, the Netherlands, France, and Italy. By 2026, Qatar will send 1/3 of its LNG output to Europe. In numbers, Qatar's total gas exports account for roughly 5–6% of the world's entire natural gas trade. That may sound modest, but natural gas is essential for heating, electricity, and industry. Even a temporary disruption can cause global price spikes. And here's the crucial part. Nearly all of Qatar's LNG exports, about 98%, are shipped out through the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea. At its narrowest, it's only 21 nautical miles wide. but the actual navigable channel in each direction is just 2 miles wide. This is the most important energy choke point in the world. Through it passes approximately 20% of the world's oil consumption and roughly 30% of the world's LNG supply. For Qatar, the strait is the only viable maritime route to reach its customers. A small pipeline to the UAE only serves regional neighbors. This gives enormous leverage to Iran, which controls the northern side of the strait. Iran has repeatedly threatened to close it. While a full closure is unlikely, Iran also relies on the strait for its own exports. Even temporary disruptions cause massive volatility. In 2019, attacks on tankers near the strait caused oil prices to jump nearly 20% in just a few days.
Insurance premiums soared, and some shipping companies suspended routes. Qatar ships over 200 LNG tankers per month through these waters.
But the risk isn't just attacks. Iran has harassed vessels, conducted military exercises, and threatened to mine the strait. Even the fear of disruption can send energy prices skyrocketing. Experts call the Strait of Hormuz the jugular vein of global energy. For Qatar, it's even more critical. While Saudi Arabia has alternative pipelines, Qatar has no large-scale bypass. This makes Qatar more exposed to strait-related risks than almost any other energy exporter. That's why Qatar has invested in diplomacy, neutrality, and the world's largest LNG fleet to keep energy flowing even when tensions flare. How does Qatar protect its lifeline? First, diplomacy. It hosts the largest U.S. military base in the Middle East, Al Udeid Air Base.
At the same time, it has deep economic ties with Iran, co-managing the North Field gas reservoir. This dual relationship gives Qatar unique mediation power.
Second, infrastructure. Qatar Energy operates one of the world's largest LNG carrier fleets, with high security protocols and cooperation with the U.S. Fifth Fleet. Third, long-term contracts. Decades-long deals mean customers like Japan and Germany have a vested interest in the strait's stability. Could Qatar ever bypass the strait? Some have proposed a pipeline across UAE to Oman, but it would be astronomically expensive and politically complex. For now, Qatar remains dependent on the Strait of Hormuz, and the world remains dependent on Qatar's gas. Let's summarize the numbers. Qatar holds 24.7 trillion cubic meters of gas reserves, over 10% of the world total. It produces over 170 billion cubic meters per year. It will soon increase LNG capacity to 126 million tons per annum, a 60% jump. Qatar supplies 20 to 22% of the global LNG market, and nearly all of that supply must pass through the Strait of Hormuz, the waterway that carries 30% of the world's LNG and 20% of its oil. For the world, Qatari gas is a cornerstone of energy security. For Qatar, the Strait of Hormuz is the key to its economic survival. Small geopolitical tensions in the Persian Gulf can send ripples through global markets, affecting electricity bills in London and industrial output in Tokyo.
Thank you for watching. If you found this deep dive helpful, like and subscribe for more insights on the forces shaping our world.